Hello, I'm Jessica and welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to go over how to make perfect mashed potatoes. I wanted to give you around 10 different tips and things you might be doing wrong that will get you gloopy or subpar mashed potatoes. And I also wanted to show you the #1 kitchen gadget that I didn't own that is pretty affordable that made a huge difference in fluffy mashed potatoes. So let's get into the tips. Tip #1 is using the wrong type of potatoes. Idaho russet potatoes or Yukon Gold are some of the best potatoes that you can use for mashed potatoes. You can use other potatoes. However, these will give you the best and most consistent results. Tip #2 is mixing them. Sharing is caring. So in a nutshell, if you mix and do half and half of 2 different potatoes, you will get much better results than just using one type. However, using one type will definitely work. So don't run out to the store. If you just have one, go with it. Tip #3 is not washing or prepping your potatoes correctly. Potatoes come dirty. They're from the ground. They are cleaned. If you buy potatoes and clean them right away, they'll go bad on you faster. So they come not super clean, but that's on purpose to preserve them. Before you make mashed potatoes is either peel the potatoes or wash and scrub them. Now, especially with the Yukon Gold potatoes, they have such a thin, soft skin. A lot of times people will just scrub and wash them and just keep the peel on. The russet potatoes have a tougher skin and they tend to have, I feel like, more dirt on the outside. And so you really don't want an earthy taste to your mashed potatoes. So it is a really good idea to really scrub and wash the potatoes. Tip #4 is not seasoning your water. You definitely want to add salt and a pretty generous amount. When the potatoes are being cooked, they open up a little bit more and absorb more of the salt that is in the water, similar to what pasta does. And so you want to use about 1 tablespoon of salt per 1 pound of potatoes that you're cooking. But then when it gets time to seasoning your potatoes at the end, start with a little bit and work your way up because you don't need to go crazy. Undersalted is okay because you can always add more salt, but oversalted potatoes are a little bit harder to fix. Mistake #5 that you might be doing is boiling your water first and then adding your potatoes to it. You want to add your potatoes to your pot, then add water, and then heat it up to boiling and cook it until they're tender. You don't want to add them to boiling water because if you add them to boiling water, the outside gets cooked first more than the inside, and you can end up with very inconsistent potato, and that will give you clumps and kind of crunchy sections if you're not careful. Mistake #6 you might be doing is boiling your potatoes whole, and that's similar to what I've said already, but the potato will not cook evenly. So you might have a very loose, falling apart mash on the outside and firm centers. So the best thing you can do is cut it into small pieces and then you will get the most consistent results. So this is kind of an extra tidbit. It's not one of the things you might be doing wrong, but if your potatoes are too watery, before you've done anything to them, just after straining them, you can put them back in the pot, heat it for about a minute on medium heat, and you can let some of the water evaporate that's been in there, and that way you won't have watery mashed potatoes. This normally doesn't happen to me, but if it has happened to you, that's one way to fix that. So #7 was for me the biggest game changer, and that is using the wrong kitchen gadget or kitchen tool to process your mashed potatoes. So my mom used to always use a mixer. And for her, it worked. Most of the time, my mom did not have gloopy mashed potatoes. I think that I was over processing them. If you use a food processor or a mixer like this, you can break down the starches too quickly in the mashed potatoes and you will very quickly get gloopy mashed potatoes. The other tools that you can use is, you can obviously use a fork. It's just a lot more labor intensive, but if you have nothing else, that will work. If your potatoes are cooked well enough, a fork can mash them. The next gadget you might have is just a potato masher, and you just mash the potatoes. Some people serve not a perfectly smooth mashed potato, but kind of with some chunks. And especially if you leave some peels on your potatoes, then you're gonna wanna use one of these guys. They also sell one like this that has more of a flat plate and smaller holes, and this works really well. It will break down your potatoes into mashed potatoes. One tip though is if you want to have some skin in your mashed potatoes, peel half of your potatoes. So then that way you get some skin in with it when you mash, but it's not too much, if that makes sense. So the gadget that was the game changer for me was a potato ricer. And so what it is it is a stainless steel container. It opens up and you put your cooked potatoes in here, you push it down, and then it squeezes out the potatoes. My husband prefers a smooth mashed potato without chunks, so that is why I was kind of looking for a different option than the potato masher that I already have. This one is from IKEA. At the time when I bought it, it was under $12. Now it's a little bit more expensive, but I'll be sure to link it below if you have an IKEA close by. I also went out and bought the Amazon equivalent. There's some features about this Amazon version that I like better. It has rubbery grip. The only thing I don't like as much is I don't have as big of hands, and so this one is easier for me to push down than this one because it doesn't go further than this. But this potato ricer has a nice little silicone edge, and that can stick onto the bowl so it won't fall off, which this one does not have. I also saw a couple on Amazon that had this part come off, so it was a little bit smaller to store and to clean. These are both dishwasher safe. You do want to rinse them and then put them straight in the dishwasher, or wash them right after using them, because squished potato is like cement on these, but it makes such a difference. All you do is squeeze it through, you add your ingredients, stir it, and you have the perfect mashed potatoes. I also saw a food mill. It is a kitchen tool that can do a lot of different functions, and so it also has the ricer kind of attachment. You just kind of mill at the top instead of a squeeze motion. So for some people, that might be an easier tool to use. So the 8th thing you might be doing wrong is only using butter and not using enough butter. Unfortunately, what makes mashed potatoes really good is butter, and a lot of it, as well as extra salt and pepper, whatever seasonings you like, but you definitely need to add some form of dairy to it. You can do some low-fat dairies, but it will taste better if you add full-fat dairies to it. But definitely mix it up. It always tastes good if you add a little bit of a sour element, whether it's cream cheese or sour cream. The 9th thing you might be doing wrong is adding cold ingredients. So if you think about it, and if you can, have your butter out and warming up to room temperature, as well as a small amount of milk or sour cream, whatever it is you prefer to use in your recipe, so that they don't curdle and they do not cool down your mashed potatoes too fast. The 10th thing that you might be doing to get gloopy mashed potatoes is you might be overprocessing them. So some people are gonna comment on here and they say they use their food processor and it works out every time, or they use their hand mixer, it works out every time, and that's wonderful. For me, I think I overprocessed them because I didn't realize it. So I would beat them to death and then they would just fall apart and become gloopy. Now, they were still edible. We'd still eat them. It's fine. They just weren't as good as they could be. They weren't living up to their full potential, I guess you could say. The 11th thing that you might be doing wrong is making your mashed potatoes too early. If you make them too early in the day, they just over time will break down and become more gloopy. So this is one of the items that I would try to make at the very end. So if you're getting a Thanksgiving meal or Christmas meal ready, I would make them at the very end if at all possible. If you have leftover mashed potatoes, you can actually freeze them. You can put them in chunks on parchment paper, flash freeze them, and then put them in Ziploc bags and try to get as much air out as possible. I love doing shepherd's pies. If you're wanting to make restaurant style garlic mashed potatoes, one of the tips that I have found is if you roast a whole garlic clove, you can then squeeze the garlic out once it's been roasted, and that mixed in gives you the really good flavor without being spicy. So I'll definitely link a restaurant style mashed potato recipe down below. Another thing I wanted to mention is having a good peeler. I love this IKEA potato peeler. I am half German, and for some reason I peel toward myself, and I'm pretty sure all of my siblings do as well. And I know my husband, who's American, he peels away from himself. So for the longest time, we'd have to have 2 potato peelers because the German ones are sharp or work better when you peel towards yourself, and the American ones are the opposite. My husband preferred for a while this OXO peeler. I'll link it below. I prefer this one, and we both like this one because it works both directions. If there are any mistakes that I missed, please let me know in the comments below. If you have a really good mashed potato recipe, specific seasonings that you love to make, I'd love to also hear that. I tend to just do salt, pepper, and either Creole or Bill's Seasonal. It's one of my favorite seasonings. And then sometimes I do a restaurant style garlic mashed potato recipe as well. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that this helps you make an even better holiday meal if that's your plan, or just a regular dinner. And I hope you have a great day. Cheers.